If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property XPerts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Jiggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy. Hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Property XPerts Podcast with me, Ben Richards, and Jack Jiggins. And if you're watching on YouTube, the big question this week is there demand? We will find out later what there is demand for, or if there isn't. So, welcome if you're new. We are on a mission to deliver 1,000 homes and £1 billion in property in the UK, collaborating with trusted investors. And on these weekly XP Weekly live podcasts, we talk about the trials and tribulations of business and entrepreneurship and property development. So if you are in any of those spaces, you are in the right place. On this week's agenda, we have lots of interesting things that have happened this week, including if my screen changes, what is on the agenda this week? Redbridge Landlord Forum webinar, which is something that Jack joined, and he's going to be giving us some insights into how the landlord market is faring up at the moment. With new Labour government, there's obviously been a lot of change over the last couple of years in the space. So I'm hoping to learn a few things from Jack myself on today's call. Number 2 is we're going to be talking about an IBG. If you don't know what that is, stick around and you'll find out. Jack's going to be talking you through some of his secrets on how to quantify and find areas of high demand. So, when you're investing in property, you want to find areas that are in big demand so that you know that your flats and your rooms are going to be let out as fast as possible. I've been on site on one of our sites in Muswell Hill this week, and I'm going to be giving you an update on what's happened and what the latest progress has been made at our site there. Jack's got another hack for you, and it's all about mixed use finance products. So if you're doing some commercial conversions, or if you're buying some shops with uppers, then definitely stick around to that, because this hack isn't something you want to miss. We're doing some interesting stuff within our Muswell Hill site, something we haven't done before, and that is installing home automation. And I'm going to be talking you through the intricacies of that and the products we've chosen and why we've chosen the products. It's quite cool, so stick around. And then Number 7, why the metric of return on equity is so important. Jack's, banged the drum around this on numerous occasions, and he's going to be talking through it again this time around. XP surveys continues to rise, and we're having some of our best months yet, and we're going to be going into a bit of detail on how we think we've achieved that and where we've got to so far in 2025. And then we've been on a podcast with the Property Funder, so we're going to be giving you the lowdown on what was discussed in that conversation. And as always, a Q&A. So if you're tuning in and you've got some burning questions about your business or property development that you want to know, drop them in the comments. We will try and we are live today, so drop them in the comments and we can add them to the Q&A at the end of the session. But without further ado, let's jump into the Redbridge Landlord Forum webinar.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure to be on a webinar with 126 people. And it was really funny and also slightly embarrassing, because they needed to allow me to be a speaker and unmute myself. But they were like, "Oh, Jack, you need to unmute your mic." And I was like trying to tell them, like with my hands, that they need to allow me to unmute. And they're like, "Yeah, he's still having troubles unmuting." So the first 5 minutes wasn't fun because I was trying to sign language that people need to let me in myself. I've actually got it written on my notepad here, which I just held up to the camera in the end. But anyway, they got the gist of it. But typically, the property events that Ben and I would normally attend is property developers and property investors of what I would call more new money. I would call sort of new trends, young and hungry, onto basically similar to our businesses. Most of our listeners are people that want to be doing what we're doing, or people are already doing what we're doing, and that's kind of like the people that we surround ourselves with. So essentially, it was really the reason I was saying that is because it was really interesting being part of a community where I believe it was kind of like the old I would call it old money of landlordship, not necessarily like the old money as in the phrase old money, but like the older type of landlords, the people that are actually probably exiting the market, that are really concerned about interest rates, that are really concerned about buy-to-lets being unfundable anymore. So it's really interesting being on a panel in that environment. It was very heavy around the specific topics of mortgage rates, where the market's going, the economy. One of the questions was adding VAT to school fees, and I was literally there like, why is this relevant? But I guess it's relevant for that generation of landlords. You know, they've got to take these things into consideration, because they might have sat on a portfolio and they might be exiting some of their portfolio to fund school fees, etc., etc. But anyway, it was super interesting. We talked about the debt market, we talked about finance costs, and I made everyone shocked when I said finance cost movement at the moment doesn't really change a development deal. It changes your costs about 1%, but that shouldn't kill a deal. It's everything else that kills the deal: delays, planning, sales market, bigger problems. And yeah, it was super interesting. So it was kind of like me, very active developer, as opposed to very inactive larger landlords, and like communicating with that. And what was really interesting is that I kind of get the impression that this is my general synopsis, that a lot of those people are scared of what, like, landlordism now. They're kind of like scared of the market. They don't really like being taxed and being hit. You know, they're kind of like death by 1,000 cuts. Like it's got to that point now for landlords that have portfolios in their own personal name, that is really difficult. There's compliance, there's landlords, the tenants are getting more rights, you've got taxation, you've got change in interest costs, you've got all of these ailments that add up to fundamentally making their life more difficult. So that was my general sentiment. And interestingly, they asked me, what opportunities do you see in the market space? And I do believe that there's a huge opportunity in the market for almost a wash of ownership, where a lot of privately owned landlords that own their own properties are probably cashing in at the moment, paying the tax on it and investing in other things, whether that's generational investment or whether that's into other commodities, or maybe even new properties underneath a limited company structure. But interestingly, I think there's a huge opportunity there to buy assets off these people that don't want the aggravation and the taxation of this old stock. And kind of see it as like, you know, everyone's talked about, you see baby boomers are the biggest generation of holding wealth, and a lot of that is in assets, and those assets are being taxed. They're either being taxed now or when they die. So what does that mean for the younger generations of the baby boomers? It means there's opportunity there, obviously. So I think there's huge opportunity in that space. It'll be interesting to see what people do to create opportunity in that space. Yeah, that was pretty much a summary, but it was cool. Massive webinar. It's rare to get a webinar with like 125 people at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I'd love to know what our listeners think
before it started as well.
Is buy to let dead? You know, does that are people investing in pure buy to let?
Depends where you are. I think it is dead in the south.
Mm-hmm.
But Ryan, who operates in Darlington, thinks that buy to lets work better than HMOs now.
Yeah,
you heard it here first.
But you're getting much higher yields up there, aren't you? Like you say, in the south, when you're interest. I guess if you're buying cash, and you don't have any interest costs, then you you might be able to make stuff work. But with high interest rates at the moment, it's just so tough.
Yeah, I mean, these are some stats. So this is basically stats around landlords selling their rental properties in the final quarter of 2024. 26% of landlords sold at least some of their rental properties, surpassing previous record, which was 25% in a quarter. This trend is continuing to expected to continue. 41% of landlords planning to sell properties within the next 12 months. Now, obviously, landlordism and people that want to build their portfolio, it tends, in a good market, tends to go in the other direction. They normally pull out equity and buy more, but it's obviously in the opposite trajectory for landlords. And so that is compared to 41% of landlords planning to sell their properties, whereas 6% intending to buy. So yeah, super interesting.
Yeah. Alfie, thanks for your question already. That's great. Do you feel obliged to view every property you offer on? Sometimes feels a waste of time to view a property when you know you're offering half the guide price. We will answer that at the very end, so do stay tuned. On to point number 2, which is insurance-backed guarantees. That's what IBG stands for. If you are waiting on bated breath, from the agenda intro as to what an IBG was, that is what it is, an insurance-backed guarantee. It's an insurance policy that will honour the terms of the original contractor's warranty for both workmanship and products should they cease trading. Most commonly, the guarantee is for a period of 10 years. I bring this up because if you are converting a property, if you are constructing a new build, more often than not, you will need a 10-year structural defect warranty. And those warranty providers will require certain items to be guaranteed with one of these insurance-backed guarantees. So basically, if the builder goes bust, they step in and it's got an insurance product wrapped around it, whereby if there are any issues, it's covered by that insurance product. You will need to provide these for the most part for any warranty provider that is providing a warranty on your property. And I thought I'd focus on the 2 key things that we see being required by warranty providers for an insurance-backed guarantee. First one being flat roofs. They should tell you from the get-go what they require these IBGs for, but it's often in quite small print. If you don't really read through the terms of those warranties, what you can find is you get to the end of a project, you speak to your flat roof contractor when you realize you need one of these IBGs, and they say, well, actually, we can't give an IBG on the roof. So then you're stuck. You're then having to probably pay through the nose for somebody else to give some sort of insurance-backed guarantee against work that they maybe haven't done, which is going to cost you a lot more because there's a huge amount of risk in that. So make sure that you're aware of these from day one. Often we find that warranty providers only want flat roof IBGs if the flat roof area of the total roof is more than 25%. But again, that will change and that will vary. We found that seems to be like a standard position for a lot of warranty providers. And then the second one, this one's just for Patrick tuning in, who is one of the site manager of the Old Maltings. I know he tunes in most weeks, so hi Patrick. And the photo you can see on site is of the Old Maltings. It's of the Undercroft sections, which are going to be turned into that particular section. We turned into 2 flats, but you can see the waterproof tanking systems that have been installed, and that is the other thing that a lot of warranties providers will want an insurance-backed guarantee for. So hopefully that's useful. Hopefully saves you some money. If you don't know about these, if you don't know you need them, make sure that you are on it and you check the warranty provisions and what they're asking for, and make sure you speak to your contractors about getting IBGs for those items. And that's the type of value that we like to give on the Property XPerts podcast. So if you do find value in these conversations, please do rate us on Spotify, leave us a review on Apple, and drop us a comment. Spotify now has an option to comment, and we've been getting lots of comments in over the last couple of weeks from people. So yeah, let us know how you get on, what you found enjoyable, and if there's any questions that you have, let us know in there as well. So yeah, and if you are watching on YouTube, please take time to just like it, and if you can share it with just one person, then that would be much appreciated. Over to you, Jack.
Cool. So this is all to help you if you are not confident about a location from a HMO perspective, or you've got a HMO in an area and you kind of want to get a head start. So this is basically advertising before something's ready or launched, or even potentially moved into that particular location. We're very active now, so we kind of have a good flavour of where demand is built. But this is, for an example, for our scheme in Longhambra, where we've got stock coming to market. If we have, for an example, private development, like we do our site in Abingdon, for an example, we kind of launched that off plan. So we've launched sales before it's even finished, so that we can build interest and actually sell units before the building's finished. This is exactly the same with rentals. And I suppose the unique thing about Longhambra is its tiny location, very close to Woodstock and fairly close to Whitney, fairly close to Oxford as well. But it's in a location that we're not that active in. So for us to de-risk that, we want to understand what sort of interest would be in that area. And to do that, we do something called pre-launching an ad to express interest on a building, exactly the same as you would pre-selling units or even whatever it may be. But anyway, so essentially our block in Longhambra is 14 lettable bedrooms, which is 5 cluster HMO flats. And evidently when that's finished, which is, only weeks away, that's going to be quite a lot of space to fill. I believe that actually the gross rent roll is something like 12 grand a month. So we want to make sure that every week we make sure it counts. That's like 3 grand a week in gross revenue that you're not targeting if you're not getting that let as soon as you can. And that opportunity cost is absolutely huge. So about a month ago, we launched this advert to say we've got stock coming to Longhambra. There's no wishy-washy images of what we're doing. It's just particularly a targeted ad to resource interest. And I don't know if Ben actually knows the inquiry rate. So we've got 14 lettable bedrooms. Ben, have a guess how many inquiries we've got in a few weeks?
22.
Nearly 34.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So with those inquiries, if we have a 50% success rate, we filled that accommodation. So as you can see, now knowing that we've got comfort, now knowing that we've got an inquiries list, now knowing that we can host an open day, the day that we possibly can get it let out. One thing that's really, really important is people, when people move properties, it's normally triggered by work, end of tenancy, or personal situations. Those timings, you may be missing out on 15 of those inquiries if you're not pre-launching and going, actually, we've got something coming to market. Bear with us a couple of weeks. We'll show you it then, and then you can then move in. So it's capturing predated market, obviously current market, and then ongoing for future market as well. So highly recommend getting advertised sooner. It's the same as selling. You're basically just obviously advertising a rentable place. If you're not sure about a location, you can put out what is called a dummy ad. I don't know if that's legit or not, but I mean, that's something that you can do. But yeah, that's what we did for Longhambra, and we now got a really good list to go through to let that out as our first one in Longhambra, and hopefully fill it pretty quickly. And like I say, if that just saves us a week or 2 weeks, it's like 3 to 6 grand that we could be making just being on top of things. That's pretty much it.
Top tips. Cool. On to a slightly bigger scheme, which if you've been tuning in over the last couple of months, you'd have seen the progress on this one. This is a large pair of semis that we're adding 100 square meter of basement onto, and then converting it with various extensions to 9 flats. So this would be the largest scheme that we're doing in terms of pound per square foot resale value. These should sell for £900 a square foot. Nice affluent area of North London. Good location. Will be a fantastic project once we're finished. I'm super excited now that it's starting to take shape. But the basement is almost completed. It's always a massive feat of engineering. If you've seen some of the photos that we've shared before, it's a big old piece, lots of civils works, lots of concrete, lots of drainage, but we're almost there now. We are casting the final bay of the basement this week. It to be fair, might already been done. That was when I was on site on Monday. So casting the final bay this week, and I've just selected a few photos on screen. So if you are on YouTube or now Spotify, you can watch the video episodes on Spotify now. I just wanted to pick out a couple of things. So this one on the right, we have chemically cleaned the front brickwork. So you can see this more yellow patch of brickwork against what has basically been gathering dust for the last 120 years on the right hand side, which is what it is currently. So I can't wait to see the rest of the facade cleaned up so that it's returned back to its former glory with the yellow stock brick all on that frontage, and all of this is painted fresh white and new fascias, new guttering. It's going to look absolutely incredible from the front. So yeah, that's a bit of what's to come. And then on this photo, we've got the large rear extension on the ground floor. We've got this soldier course detail that runs all the way across. These are massive bifold windows that are going to go in very shortly. And then behind this white I mean, it's basically protective film. Once that's all stripped off, you'll see like a dark brown zinc metal cladding, which sort of really goes really well with this yellow stock brick, which again, I can't wait to strip that off and sort of reveal what it's going to look like behind. The penthouse image is this one second to left, and that's just to show what's, we've got First Fix Electrics going in on the site there. This is the big kitchen, dining, living space that's going to be incredible. 2 large windows that walk out onto a massive terrace overlooking London. So yeah, super excited to see that one forming. And this image on the left hand side is one specifically for Francesco from Aura Architecture. He designed the spaces within this building, and he's been wanting a long time to get a curved wall somewhere in some of our schemes, so I thought I'd let him have it on Colney Hatch Lane. So this will look really cool. As you come up onto the first floor landing, you're basically, straight ahead of you will be this sort of curved wall that sort of guides you around to 2 of the flats, and will look just something different and something really cool. So yeah, super excited to see the progress now. We're really motoring. We're hoping to have the show home finished by the end of June, and then be at PC at the end of July. And yeah, it's been a little bit of a slower start to get to this point, but now that things are really starting to crack on. So yeah, excited.
I know a good carpenter how to fit the skirting on curved walls.
Yeah. Is that you?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Nice. Lots of scoring, right? And
yeah, it's like, those wooden snakes that you used to get in the gift shop at zoos.
Yes, or Lucas brings home in his party packs, which we've got right upstairs. So we've got one of those snakes in the house as we speak. Cool. So for those that listen regularly, we always bang on about having management accounts in place, having good financial management within any of your businesses. So having P&Ls at hand, balance sheets and cash flow forecasts. And we use a accounting software called Xero to do that. And I know a lot of people listening to this will already be using Xero. But if you're not, you're missing out. For the sake of something like $30 a month, you basically have your whole bookkeeping on an app, on the Xero platform, where you can get information in whatever form you want. You can track the financial health of your company, and we have a referral bonus for you, so you can get 90% off that monthly subscription for 6 months using the referral link. It's going to be in the link. There'll be a link in the description, but there is a bit.ly link on screen for you to copy and use as well. So make sure you make the most of that. Cool. Fixed use financial products hack. Jack's hacks. Fire away.
Yeah. So this one was actually a really interesting one, because in Central Suites we don't tend to do much mixed use. Reason being, we haven't done Ranjan's course. We'll have to tag him in that. If you head over to my YouTube channel, so basically we don't tend to deal too much with mixed use stuff. So the financial market space for this is kind of like I had to learn it, if that makes sense, and ask questions, because basically the brokers did a job. They went to market, they got rates, but there was no creativity behind it. Now the principle is a residential mortgage is almost half the price in some instances than a mixed use commercial product. Well, I'll actually rephrase that. Resi is about half the price of commercial, and mixed use is kind of in between. So if you have a resi heavy, so this property is exactly that. This property is essentially a 7-bedroom HMO, which is probably worth about 700 grand, and 150k flat on the ground floor. The residential is a large portion of that gross development value. Therefore, if you take a mixed use product, you're paying, as you can see on the screen, 7.34%. Whereas if you took a residential product alone, just for the uppers, you're paying 5%. So the cost difference is kind of where what is happening is the commercial part of the building is bringing down the cash flow of the resi part. So what I've learned in this exercise is it's better to split them out basically and get 2 different products. It's kind of almost better to split out the commercial, not even leverage it, and still get residential product on the uppers from a cash flow perspective. So on the screen, you can see, and for the listeners, I'll walk you through. So if we went with Hampshire Trust Bank to buy this with a mixed use product, we'll pay 7.34% for the product, which is 4,600 cost of finance every month. which is still fine. You know, I'm kind of in inverted commas happy with that, because our gross income is about 7k, so there's still margin there to do that product. But if we split out the residential and the commercial, I'm borrowing 100 grand less in actual money. So my leverage is 100 grand less, so I might have to leave about 100 grand more in, but my cost of that finance is 2,700 per month, and the income is still the same. So the margin is hugely different, and the reason is because, obviously, as mentioned, the residential value is greater than the commercial value, so it kind of outweighs itself. So what we're doing on this is we're actually splitting out the commercial and splitting out the resi. We're probably going to try and sell the commercial or refinance it on its own product, and then obviously crack on and refinance the larger bit to pay back the investor and the debt with the residential product. But I thought that was really useful, because our brokers didn't really put this at the forefront and recommend this. They just said a mixed use product is 7.3%. And I was kind of like ready to go to hit the button on valuation, because I was like, I need to get this done. But then I was like, hang on a second, what if we went with a lender that we could split these out and that are comfortable and know that that's going on, blah, blah, blah. And this is what we ended up with. So even though it's fiddly and you might end up with a couple more grand in legal fees, and you have to also strike a long leasehold for the commercial or vice versa on the resi, this is what we're doing. And it's saving us, the easiest way to look at it is a mixed use product against the straight resi product is to have the mixed use product. It's going to cost us 100 grand more over 5 years, as opposed to costing us 100 grand less over the 5 years. So principally, we're making 20 grand a year in finance savings by splitting it out, which is huge. You know, that is a good enough deal on its own. If you said to me, I'll give you 20 grand off the back of 100k cash left in, I would take that all day of the week. So interesting analysis. So principle of it, push back on your brokers, start being creative, and that's kind of moral of life, really.
It's worth, for those that haven't done the sort of long leasehold and splitting out titles and all that sort of stuff. Let's say you are converting a property freehold into 3 flats. You've got 3 leaseholds on those new flats. You can't actually create leasehold titles from your freehold into the same name. So it does have to be a third party, which is effectively another one of your companies. Let's say XP Estates bought the whole building. We might have to then carve out either the commercial or the residential into one of our other businesses, so that it is a third party as far as the legal process is concerned. So I made this mistake actually when I was doing my first property development, where I had an end terrace property and got planning approval for a 2-bed on the side. Effectively, I couldn't just chop the title off into my own name again. It had to be to a third party. Obviously that third party can be in my ownership, but it has to be, it can't just be the same entity that owns the freehold. So, seek legal advice, make sure you're separating those up as you should. But like Jack says, it's well worth doing when you're making those types of savings. Cool. And that's the type of stuff that we advice that we can give in a mentorship capacity. So we do offer one-to-one consulting. We offer mentorship for those that have tricky issues within their businesses and want to learn from people like us who have probably done what you're trying to achieve, probably made some mistakes on the way and can save you the time and the energy and the cost of making those same mistakes. So if you're interested in more one-to-one consulting for your business or your next property developments, then reach out. We'd love to have a chat with you. Cool. On the Muswell Hill project, which I showed just a minute ago, we are installing something that we haven't done before on other projects, and it's some form of home automation. I mentioned that the value of those assets are going to be £900 a square foot in terms of resale value. So high-end finish. From an interiors perspective, it's going to look incredible. We've got sort of 3-meter high ceilings on the ground floor. We've got lovely, old Victorian style coving, Shaker style kitchens, engineered wood floors. It's going to be, really, really nice. But what we feel like we needed to enhance the GDV and or sort of make it more saleable and give it something different was some sort of home automation. People buying at that level are going to expect something slightly different, and this is a great way of doing it. Now, we looked at various different home automation systems like Control 4 and Crestron and Lutron for lighting, and there's various other players in the mix. What we sort of found was that they're very expensive, like eye-wateringly expensive. So we looked at alternatives, and luckily Heather, who is in our team, actually used to work for Loxone. So she was very quick to put Loxone in the mix. We had Loxone come and speak at one of our XP Surveys events last year, and super impressed with the product and the offering and ultimately the cost of it, because it's been developed by software engineers. So that everything in the back end is bang on. It's been built with that in mind in terms of the functionality and the upgradability of the system. So if you look at the images I've got on screen here, you've got the sort of mini servers and the various extensions that you can add. So it's a very, very adaptable type system. So if we install the mini server into all of our flats, but then maybe add the extra extension for the speaker systems in our penthouse, because that's the most expensive unit, and actually we don't want to fork out for speaker systems that might not get used by some of the lower value assets, for example. This has great functionality to do that. So we can install the bare minimum that we can in every flat, but in the ones that we do want to go, supercharged, like the penthouses, we can then add the extra functionality of inbuilt speaker systems, or extra functionality for roller blinds, or that type of additional feature that we won't put on every single flat. And that's the beauty of Loxone. You have app control, wherever you go on your phone. You have a big iPad, which is wall mounted, which again has all the functionality that you need within that iPad. But every room that you have, every room has its own touchpad. So similar to this, what you see on screen, you've got the light panel, which is the central panel that you touch. You might have some shutters. So again, on this left-hand side of the touch panel, you've got shutters up, shutters down. You've got volume up, volume down on the right-hand side for your music. And generally, you can customize the 5 or more touch points that you have on these touch controls. It's a really customizable system. It's been built with that in mind, whereby you can start with a small amount of kit and then upgrade over time. As long as you've got the hardwired infrastructure within your ceiling voids, connecting back, you can play around with the upgrades as much as you want. And just to give you an insight, in Colney Hatch Lane, we will have heating controls for every single room. We will have lighting control for every single room. The penthouse will have speaker systems, inbuilt speakers within the ceilings, where you can connect into Spotify and all those standard type music systems. What we aren't doing is installing the presence sensors, so you can go one step forward with your home automation, have presence sensors in every room, for example, whereby the lighting will automatically dim or increase depending on the lux levels from outside in terms of the daylight. You could open the door and instantly your lighting goes on because you've come home from work, and the presence sensors detects that you're coming home, and it automatically turns lights on. There's lots and lots of functionality that this provides, and I'm super excited to see it installed and working as well as it can, and hopefully it makes people want to choose our flat and our developments over the next best. Cool. Point number 7, why the metric of return on equity is so important for opportunity cost.
100%. We fall victim of this on our St Helens Mill project. So it's just to talk through. Interestingly, when people are in property investment, property development, HMOs, anything else, they tend to look at return on investment. They tend to look at yield, gross yield, net yield. They tend to look at profit on GDV. They tend to look at IRR, which is indefinite rate of return, or we call it annualized rate of return. So it's always return on cash. And essentially, one metric that always gets missed is the end of the project in our HMO portfolio, for an example. So this is actually our cluster flat block of HMOs. It nets just over £3,000 net, which is 71% return on cash left in, which is great. Really happy with that. That cash that's stuck in that deal that could be pulled out and put into other stuff is accruing a 71% return. So really, really happy with that. Cool, great, fantastic, thank you. What we can't ignore though is the gross development value of this site is £1.3 million, which means the total equity, so the equity is the profit plus the cash left in is 391,000. So that could be money that we could have back into our business, our wheelhouse, investing in other things. And we want to make sure that we're quantifying the cost of that capital staying in there, because that's a huge opportunity cost, especially if you're a young, growing business. That needs to be a good return. And what I mean by need to be a good return is essentially outstripping inflation. Because what will happen is 5 years will come around to refinance, or 10 years will come to bound refinance or sell or exit. And if your return on equity as a cash flow position hasn't outstripped inflation, you're kind of just in the same position as you were. So that's why we like the analysis of return on the equity that's stuck in the deal, because it quantifies, shall I sell this, realize the equity and invest in other things? So it gives you that metric, which you can then go and hunt for better returns. So this particular project, the mortgage we're getting is actually, so the reason there's 3 columns is because it's a mortgage stress test, 3 different values. And essentially, we should get a mortgage lower than 5.5% on this particular site. So I think it's actually 5.04, which is really good, which means that cost goes up. But anyway, the current return on equity is showing as 9.77%. So that's every year the cash flow produces a 10% return on the cash equity that's left in that would have been realized if we sold it. Yes, there's some sales fees and things like that. But that metric is really important, because if we know that we can get better than that in the market, we then know we're probably better off trading that site on. So it's to materialize a decision whether to hold or sell. And we've got sites where that return on equity is like 3%. And we're locked in on a 5-year fix. So it's good to have that in your sort of, let that spreadsheet communicate with you and tell you how aggressively that's producing a return on your own cash, because that cash could come out and go into other things. So it's just not to ignore return on equity, basically.
Nice. Good stuff. XP Surveys has had its best month ever in February. And we looked at the stats in March earlier today, and we've had our best month ever in March. So, we've had an absolutely stonking start to 2025. And, it's come through a lot of hard work and fiddling around with modeling, pricing models, with our operations, with making some good hires, making some bad hires. It's been a real roller coaster over the last 4 years, but I feel like we're coming out of that death valley. We are, into profitable business territory with really solid margins. And I had this conversation with somebody earlier this week, whereby the beauty of XP Surveys is that the product that we provide is very black and white. It's, we go to site, we survey it, we measure, we draw it, we send it in PDF, or we create a Revit model and send that across to the client. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes. It's as-built information, and should be 99% accurate. Whereas something like Aura, for example, where you've got the planning authority to cause delays, you've got clients changing their mind, you've got potential scope creep because you are designing something for that some people might like or might not. There's a lot of ambiguity in a business model like architecture, and it does make me think, when I'm setting up new businesses, to really think and dial down on the business model itself, and think about what the risks are, where potential issues could be, like delays, where scope could creep and cost you, chip away at your profit. And you want a business that has a solid business model from day one. That's the crux of what I'm trying to say. XP Surveys, the business model is sound. If we get everything right, then it can be a very, very profitable business, and can grow into something that is exitable at some point. When you've got a service-based business like Aura, for example, it's not the type of business you can really, really grow rapidly. For those that are tuning in thinking that architects make a lot of money, I can guarantee they don't. It's a very, very difficult business model to get right, and certainly a difficult business model to make significant profit margins on, because of all those things I've just said. So yeah, super happy with XP Surveys and everything we've been doing so far in 2025. We've done 60 surveys. Our average turnaround time from site to drawing output is 6 days. That includes just typical 3-bedroom property, but it also includes 10,000 square foot, hotels that we've turned around in really sharp time. And then our average time to site is 4 days from booking. Reality is that if you want us on site tomorrow, we can often do it. So it depends on the need of the client, but our average is 4 days. So if you are looking for measured building and topographical surveys, and you're tuning into this, you're looking to get stuck into your next property development, then get in touch. We would love to give mates rates to the viewers of the Property Experts podcast. So let us know that you tune in, and we can certainly see what we can do. So anything you wanted to say, Jack?
One thing I did want to say is for any business owners out there who have been working on things and it doesn't feel like everything's going in your way, this has been 4.5 years of graft and tweaks and changes and trial and error and investing in an offshore plotting team that then didn't turn out and cost us money, and then doing it again and it cost us money, and loads of different employees and turn around. So, trust the process and stick to a process, and it does. Building, kind of like building for the future, it does pay dividends, and this is an example of that. And long may it
continue,
something like that.
Yeah, that one. It's, just we're always quite transparent in these things. It's 4.5 years where Jack and I, have not taken anything from this business. It's redeploy, any sort of money that comes into the door, reinvest in the resources, in the technology, in the team, and we're getting to the point now where we're starting to see that pay dividends. But we've had to invest, the best part of 6 figures into this business to get it to where it is. And we're now starting to chip away at that deficit and build a business that is very, very sustainably profitable. So stick with it. Sometimes it's it's a long road, but just have faith that it will work out, and make sure you're doing as much as you can to get the systems and processes in place and the marketing funnels, and the operations that you need to create a healthy business. So keep tuning into these weekly lives. Cool. And then we had the pleasure yesterday of speaking to Mike Dean. For those that don't know Mike, he's been running, he started Avonmore Capital 10 years ago, and has built it to, a beast. I don't actually know what their book is at the moment, Jack. Do you have any idea how much they run? 60 million?
I'd guess it's probably 200.
200 million, yeah, quite a lot. And he started the Property Funder podcast not too long ago, and we had the pleasure of speaking to him yesterday about our backgrounds, how we got to where we are, how we met, how we have been successful in the property development space, how we run numerous businesses within our ecosystem, and then also about the market and where we see things going. It was a part 2, a two-part series. The first being a little bit more of an intro into Jack and I, but the second we get into detail around things we would have done differently, what we could do better to improve things, how the market is looking, and what we're doing in the future. I'm super excited to see that released. It will be released in the next 2 weeks, I think, 16th of April, potentially the first episode. Stick around, and if you're not following Michael or the Property Funder podcast, please do.
ChatGPT has said that they've just surpassed in 2023 £1 billion worth of property lent since its inception in 2015. So probably not far off at 150. That averages out probably 120 a year, but they're probably growing.
They would have compounded that. I imagine
probably about 150 to 200, which is cool.
Nice. Very good. And it is probably worth saying that the Colney Hatch Lane scheme that I showed earlier in the podcast is funded by Avonmore Capital. But that's for talk another time. Cool. So on to the Q&A. We had one come in beforehand, and we've had a couple comments and questions come in during this live. So if you've got any burning questions, we will probably stick around for the next 10 minutes. So get them in now, drop them down below. And I can see that James, who is a regular listener and always generally drops a like on Facebook. Thanks, James. If you are tuning in right now, drop a like on any platform that you're on and let us know you are enjoying this. So Daniel Young on YouTube says, "Hi lads, we have used Class MA to turn a commercial property into a house C3 use. Do we have to carry out the work to turn it into C3 before we can apply for C4? Good question. And the quick answer is yes, you do. Class MA specifically restricts you from converting and utilizing permitted development to move to a C4 use class. So you will have to get the C3 use established, and then you will have to submit a full planning application to take it from C3 to C4, because Class MA specifically restricts you from using permitted development to make that change from C3 to C4. What we tend to do when we want to go down this route is design the C3 house, as if it is in occupation as a HMO. What you don't want to do is kind of design something under Class MA that is a house under C3 use that you then have to knock loads of walls down and rearrange the whole internal space to make it a C4 use HMO. So when you're designing the C3 house, you just have to be a bit smarter with how you rearrange your bathrooms and your en suites. And do you have you might show on the plans a walk-in wardrobe to a master bedroom, but that walk-in wardrobe might be massive and 8 square meters and be technically another bedroom if you just move the door across by 1 meter, for example. So you just need to be a bit more clever. But fundamentally, yes, you will have to carry out the works, turn it into C3 use before then applying for C4 use under a full plans application. Cool. We'll go back to Alfie. I hope you've been sticking around. Do you feel obliged to view every property you offer on? Sometimes feels a waste of time to view a property when you know you're offering half the guide price. Cheeky, lowball, nice, like it. Jack?
Yeah, I mean, if it's houses, I would 100% recommend getting the offers out first, because you kind of pre-qualify if you're in the same ballpark before you make the effort to go and view a property. We're massive advocates of doing as little as possible pre-offer being accepted, and then as much as possible once the offer's been accepted. So that instructing professionals around it, getting evaluation done, all of that nonsense. You want to get it agreed, because otherwise someone else can pull that deal for you. I've seen it time and time again where developers do a load of work, get planning consultants involved, architects involved, whatever it may be, and then they don't actually end up winning the bid. And there's only so many times you can do that for free. So highly recommend for houses. You don't necessarily need to view it. For developments, it's sometimes good to view to sort of build the confidence of the seller or the agent. So it depends on the size of it. If it's a circa £1 million deal, I would certainly recommend you make the effort to go and view it to build the confidence so that you get the best opportunity in the bidding process. So kind of once you get onto the point of bigger deals, take it sort of case by case. So if you know the agent really well, you might not even need to. So building trust is important though.
Yeah, nice. Property with Lals, very interesting. So this was in regard to the Loxone home automation system. What does something like this cost per unit, and does it add significant value? Just to give you a quick overview, per unit, the baseline system will probably set you back somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 grand. And then where you've got the penthouse, for example, with the speaker system and a few other bells and whistles, that I think came in at about 5.5, something like that. So not in the grand scheme of things, when you've got units that are £900 a square foot resale, where you're selling your penthouse suite for over £1 million, this is the type of thing that I think sets you apart from everyone else. And for the sake of what is quite a small percentage of that resale value, is worth doing. Do I think it adds significant value? Not significant value. Do I think it pays for itself? I think so, yes. And when you're looking at value, we don't necessarily always just think pure figures in terms of absolute figure value, but there is value in selling something faster. So anything you can do that might not change the figure that they offer, but gets more people through the door, more offers over the line, even if they're at the same level, is also valuable to you as a developer, because you need to shift units as fast as you possibly can. So do I think it's a great sales point? Yes. Do I think it's really a great system to install? Yes. And yeah, you're probably looking at somewhere between £3,500 and £5,500 for those types of systems per unit. Cool. Sorry, I've just seen that he's responded. Very interesting, not bad shout at all, and not as dear as I expected. This would definitely provide a USP compared to counterparts on the market. Vital in this market, yeah, absolutely, and that's my sentiment exactly. I think we had a separate quote very probably a year ago from someone else that was a control 4 system, and for the 9 units, I think we were close to 80 grand. So you're talking 8-9 grand, and at that point, I'm questioning whether or not it would be worthwhile putting in. Peter, thanks for tuning in as always. If I recall, Marlow listed building consent wasn't too challenging, but what are your general thoughts on looking at developing a grade 2 listed building and local council consent? Jack's gone through the ringer with some of yours. I've been through the ringer with some of mine. Jack, you only got comments off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, we've currently got two grade 2 listed projects in Central Suites, and there's a lot more hoops that you have to jump through, and there's a lot of waiting around. So for example, our building in Wallingford, we had to get listed building consent just to do the structural remediation plan. So we waited them for 3 months, which held back the project 3 months just to get the consent to crack on. If that was not listed, we would have just done the remediation plan because it was all internal anyway. So because we were disrupting the fabric of the building, we had to then, and that was an unknown, so it delayed the project. The project was delayed overall. The costs were greater, blah, blah, blah. But you do have to have some contingency. So I would say that the grade 2 listed buildings isn't for the faint-hearted. You have to be a lot more organized. You have to be a lot more thorough. You have to be a lot more budget wary. You have to have a much greater contingency. But that kind of like the barrier for entry is relevant there. Like there's other people that would have the same view as well and not want to do those deals. So as long as there's value and time integrated into your original proposal for that particular scheme, great. I would also say that the drift between some good councils and some bad councils can be 12 months of a project. So always account for the potential worst case scenario. So Marlow, I believe, and Ben might be able to comment, they've been pretty good. Wallingford, they've been really difficult. So you kind of don't know what you're going to get. And from a planning perspective, it's less impacted by the sort of relationship you have with the council. The reason that Wallingford was really difficult is because the building's falling over. We have to disrupt the existing fabric of the building. Otherwise, it literally ends up being rubble. They couldn't see that. And they were like, well, hang on, you can't do that. They were literally like, you can't put acro props up like that. I was like, you've got to literally be kidding me. Let's take them down then. Fuck you. See what happens. But that because we started on the wrong foot, it then became a bit difficult because then they were very meticulous and difficult at proving anything. Literally, the details of we had to get consent to put a gas pipe up the front of the building, which you never, that wouldn't even be in a consideration. So yeah. Horses for courses, really. Make sure you got shitloads of budget, shitloads of time, shitloads of contingency, and you're completely aware of worst case scenario. You still get out and make a good margin, 100% crack on with them. They're a good learning curve. And some of them can be, you can create features in those buildings that you'll never be able to recreate. Having certain features open in a building that is listed do have a nice touch, and it is a bit more of a passion project. Passion projects typically lose you more money. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. I'd have said that some of our most profitable deals might be listed, and some of our least most profitable deals are probably listed.
Yeah, it's I think having budget in there and having 20% contingency on your figures is just going to be what you need for those types of buildings, depending on the size of it. Obviously, one of my Aura clients, for example, big grade 2 listed building. I think we the original contract value was about 1.5 million for it. It's about 6,000 square feet of space. It's a big old mansion, grade 2 listed mansion. 1.5 million pound contract value ended up being about 2.1. It's these things happen when you start uncovering things within grade 2 listed buildings. It starts to really ramp up in terms of the cost of repairing them and replacing things and doing things so that it doesn't diminish the importance of it. So yeah, I wouldn't shy away from it, but you just have to go in with your eyes wide open and a healthy contingency. Property with Lars again. Thoughts on buying Class MA projects in auction and how this can be de-risked. Buying Class MA projects and yeah, I mean, getting a planning consultant before you go into auction offering on something like that is fundamental. For maybe 500 quid, with certain planning consultants, you can get them to give you a 3-4 page risk report, or just an overview. This is what we're going into. I want you to highlight the key red flags that there are. Tell me, as much information as you can, whether it does comply with Class MA regulations and compliance. and any other issues from a planning perspective that I need to know about. So getting a planning consultant on board before going into that auction would be one way that I would de-risk it. Getting as much information from the previous seller as possible, because Class MA does have intricacies in terms of the criteria, in terms of when it was actually vacated, when it was last in use, how much of the last 3 years has it been in use for. So there are certain, it's not a slam dunk, just because you've got a Class E at auction, Class E commercial retail space at auction doesn't mean to say that Class MA is absolutely nailed on. You do need to check all of the criteria first before going into it, and a planning consultant's going to help you with that. Cool. Thanks, Peter. Brilliant advice. Thanks, Jack and Ben. So pad the contingency and strap in. Yeah, that would be it. Definitely. But, like Jack says, they can be beautiful projects to work on. You're bringing back to life a little bit of history. But, you have to like it. You have to like it. Otherwise, you soon get fed up with the amount of variations that keep coming in from your contractor.
It is funny. We've got a building the other side of Wallingford, which is listed, which is not listed, obviously. And it's refreshing being like turning up on site and being like, well, to avoid, let's say we have a clash and we go, right, well, this is the change we're now going to make. And then I think to myself, do we have to wait to tell anyone that we're going to do that? Oh, no, we don't. It's not listed. Crack on. And then the next day it's done. And that is a breath of fresh air when you I'm so scared of my own shadow in Wallingford now.
I mean, I was even thinking with actually with something we haven't mentioned at all. Big success for us today. Completion day on the bank. We didn't even put that in. Why didn't we put that in? So yeah, we completed on the bank in Abingdon today, which is amazing. So I'm sure we'll give a bit of a deep dive or rundown of what that project's going to entail. But I was thinking earlier when I was marking up some plans in terms of sort of stripping out the building, whether or not I need to run anything by Claire, our heritage consultant, because I was just thinking in that, in the bank, there's loads of partition walls and just stripping it back. But, I probably need to get her advice as to what I can and can't touch.
We will be getting her advice.
We will. Yes. So yeah, you can never be too careful really with listed buildings. You can be, what's it called? Criminally?
No, yeah, it's criminal offence, not a...
Criminal offence. Yeah. So yeah, just be careful. Make sure you get the right advice.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, we got to go. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Please do like, share, and comment on this if you've enjoyed it and got value from it. And yeah, pass it around, share it with people. We'd love to spread the news. And have a great weekend. Speak to you next week. Cheers.